Okay, I'm going to start today's show off with a stat for you. 95% of organizations put money into AI and get nothing measurable back for it. We're not talking underwhelming returns. We're talking about nothing in return at all.
Okay, that number is going to make two very different types of people feel two very different things.
Yep, so if you already had doubts about AI, that number just confirmed them. And if you're a true believer, you're going to think you're the exception.
But you're suggesting both of those reactions miss the point.
Both of them miss the point because AI adoption is really about culture, specifically a culture that isn't ready for change.
So let's get into that. I'm Marcus.
And I'm Julia, this is CSR. And today we're talking about why so much AI activity produces so little AI productivity and CSR's strategy for fixing it.
Okay, let's define some things here. Activity versus productivity. What's the difference in practice?
In practice, most organizations right now have a ton of AI activity. People are using tools, teams are running pilots. Someone in IT is probably trying to write a governance policy while everyone else has already adopted 3 apps IT doesn't even know exist.
That's uncomfortably specific.
It's not exaggerated. There's motion everywhere and results almost nowhere because teams are dropping tools into a culture that was never prepared to absorb them. Then, everyone acts surprised when adoption stalls.
So this isn't a technology problem.
No, any kind of tech change is usually not a technology problem. Technology adoption is a culture change problem.
Okay, so let's talk about culture then, because I think a lot of leaders think of their culture as just one primary thing. Like, we're an innovative culture, or we're risk-averse.
Right, and that's where it goes wrong. Culture isn't monolithic. There's a macro culture, like the onboarding stories, the unspoken rules about risk and failure. Then there are subcultures at the team and department level that can look nothing like the macro culture. And there are individual mindsets that both reflect and shape everything above them.
So when you're rolling out AI, you're really rolling it into 3 different layers at once.
At least 3. And they don't move together. You can have a frontline team in one location that's ready to experiment, and a senior department head somewhere else quietly undermining the whole effort without ever saying so out loud.
Both true at the same time.
Both true in the same organization on the same day.
Okay, so I know people are asking right now if that means you need everyone on board before anything moves.
No, that's the good news. You do not need consensus to shift a culture. You need somewhere between 7 and 20% of your people, depending who they are.
That's a big range.
Well, I mean, it depends on who's in it. Research on crossing the chasm puts it around 16% to get from early adopters to the early majority. Then, around a quarter, norms start to shift on their own. And McKinsey's data says, if you get the right people, you can move a culture with as little as 7%.
So less about headcount and more about the who.
Exactly. The right people aren't necessarily the ones with formal authority. They're the ones whose judgment other people trust and who've been right before. They create enough psychological safety that other people can admit, I don't know how to do this yet, but we'll get there.
And I'd guess most organizations do the opposite. They spend their energy on the resistors.
Totally, that's the single most common mistake we see. Leaders pour their energy into the skeptics and the foot draggers and even the openly hostile, trying to win them over before moving forward.
Oof, that's backwards.
Completely backwards. The resistors come along once the momentum from the group ahead of them makes it unavoidable. Or they'll just self-select out. Either way, you don't win them over with more meetings. You have to build the early cohort and let the wave do the work.
Okay, let's talk about why change is so hard to spot when it's actually happening. There are a couple of things that trip leaders up.
Yep. The first one is when you introduce any change, AI or otherwise, most people's first reaction is curiosity. So they ask questions. They might seem confused, maybe hesitant. They're still trying to figure out what this means for them.
I mean, that sounds pretty normal. How is it an obstacle?
It is normal, but the problem is what leaders do with it. They tend to read that curiosity as resistance, and they respond with their own resistance, defending the decision, dismissing the concern, or just going quiet.
So that's what actually creates the resistance.
Yeah, that's the trap. Curiosity met with defensiveness turns into skepticism fast, and skepticism turns into active opposition. You created the exact reaction you were afraid of.
What's the second thing?
People resist change when it threatens one of 5 core psychological needs. In AI conversations specifically, the big one is status. How important, how influential, how valued someone feels.
Yeah, I get that, because if a tool can do in 3 seconds what I spent years training to do
Then your sense of relevance takes a hit, whether or not their job is actually at risk. That perceived threat is real, And if you don't address it directly, it sits there and quietly wrecks your adoption numbers.
So where should leaders actually be putting their energy? You said two groups matter more than anyone else.
Yeah, so first, your board. They approve the budget, sure, but more than that, board level alignment on risk tolerance shapes what's possible for everyone underneath them. If your board hasn't explicitly agreed on how much experimentation is acceptable and what success looks like, your executive team is flying blind.
And the second group?
That is your middle managers. They're the make or break group, full stop. You can have a sharp strategy at the top and willing people on the front line. And if your middle managers are uncertain, overwhelmed, or quietly undermining it, the change doesn't take.
Because they're the ones translating strategy into what actually happens day to day.
Exactly, they're the bridge. They decide whether the people closest to the work feel supported through the transition or abandoned by it.
So if I'm pulling this together, the organizations that get real return from AI are focusing on culture.
Yes, they know where their people actually sit on the change curve. They identify the early cohort instead of chasing the holdouts and give middle managers what they need instead of assuming they'll figure it out. And they address the status threat directly instead of pretending it isn't there.
Your AI strategy only goes as far as your culture allows.
That's it. That's the whole thing.
So if someone listening is looking at their own AI rollout and recognizing some of this, what's the one move you'd make this week?
Have the conversation your board and your executive team haven't had yet. Absolutely do not schedule another AI demo. Have a real conversation about where your culture actually is and what it can absorb right now.
And talk about how CSR can help.
So we work with boards and executive teams to assess organizational change readiness, find the cultural barriers to adoption, and build the internal capacity to lead change well. For the listeners, if any of this sounds like what your organization is navigating right now, let's talk.
CSR is offering a complimentary, customized conversation for your executive team on this. Reach out through csrcommunications.com to set it up.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Take care.